Okay, so I'm going to introduce our panel moderator, Dr. Sanaz Fafai. She is the manager of cloud engineering and AI at BCAA, British Columbia Automobile Association, where she leads the company's cloud-based AI and machine learning initiatives. Over the years, she has held various data science roles in several startup companies in the UK, developing machine learning algorithms for healthcare, mobility, and autonomous driving problems. Sanaz obtained her PhD in physics from UBC. Her field of research was weak gravitational lensing, which aims to uncover the properties of dark matter by analyzing large-scale data from images of millions of galaxies. And finally, she's a strong advocate for programming skills for everyone. That's always so cool to hear about how all these different fields always involve data or data science, even though you might not think of it when you hear about astronomy. Okay, and so with that, I'll pass the virtual mic over to you.
Thank you so much, Natasha. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, okay, perfect. Thanks for the introduction. My goal is to just be the panel moderator and let all of our amazing panelists speak. So I'm very excited to be here. Thanks for the invite and setting up this panel together. I've met our panelists before, and I can tell everyone that, you know, we have some amazing women on this panel. I think it's going to be a really exciting conversation. We all have very diverse backgrounds and journeys and what brought us to this field. So I'm really looking forward to it. So I'm going to do a quick introduction of everyone, just so that you have a little bit of context. But throughout the conversation, we're going to learn more about the panelists as we ask them questions. So in the alphabetical order of the first names, here we go. So we have Bhagya Reddy. She is the director of data engineering at BT. For those of you on the Canadian side, that's British Telecom. So she's based in London, UK. And she has a master's degree in mathematics and a bachelor's degree in computer science. And she's very passionate about data engineering. So that's going to be exciting to hear that side of this field from her. Then we have Jaya Matayu, and she's a senior data scientist at Microsoft. Prior to Microsoft, she's worked at Nokia and Hewlett Packard as well. And she's more focused in AI and machine learning and deploying models into production. She holds an undergraduate in math and also a graduate degree in statistics from University of Texas at Austin. Then we have Kanchan, and she is a director of advanced analytics at InMoment. And I learned that InMoment is a leading provider of experience improvement. So that's going to be interesting to hear more. She has 2 master's degrees, one in econometrics and the other one in applied statistics. And she's also very passionate about analytics. And then we have Dr. Jaya Tabrizi. She's a co-founder and CEO of a firm based in Vancouver called Theory and Practice. And she has a PhD in experimental particle physics. She has a master's in experimental particle physics and a PhD in economics. So we used to overlap at UBC for a brief time when we were both physicists. And she's been the recipient of the 2020 Women of Influence Award, Wants to Watch Award, and she made the top 40 under 40 list from BIV. So really impressive journey for all of these ladies. I would just also let you guys know Jaya and Kanchan have joined us from Toronto. Bhagya, I mentioned, she's joined us from London, UK, and Rogaya is based in Vancouver, but now she is joining us from New York. So all over the globe, this is going to be awesome. And let's get started. All right, so let's start. I would say let's start from the beginning. Let's talk about your backgrounds, your education, and what I'm looking for to see, did your education help you in the path that you followed and brought you to area of data science, or did you do a pivot? Let us know. Who wants to go first?
I'm happy to jump.
Go for it.
But hey, let's not turn this into a pattern. So I did, as you mentioned, I did my master's in particle physics, and it was really interesting because the timing was perfect for it. I was going back and forth to Geneva. I was working at CERN. I was working on the Atlas detector, and I remember the first time that I saw the tier 3 facilities at CERN. I mean, we would wake up 70 terabytes of data, and it wouldn't even occur to us that it's not normal, right? But then fast forward, when I switched to economics for my PhD, I ended up studying game theory. So I studied why people do what they do the way they do it, but I was a very weird kind of microeconomist, if you wish. I could go to 7 terabytes of data. So, you know, the two paradigms and actually going through that transition and switch was a very humbling path for me. I don't know how many other physicists besides you, Sanaz, are in the room. I heard some notes about astrophysics and stuff like that. And I guess the joke of it is that you don't want to have an astronomy and a particle physicist in the same room, but that's a different thing. But, you know, in physics, one of the things that I kept repeating to myself is that in physics, the question is almost always given, at least when you're going through your training and when you're going through grad school. The question is given, your job is to find a solution for that question. And economics is actually quite different. Economics is like, what is the question to begin with? So you have to be very explicit about the assumptions that you are making, especially when you're trying to model behavior. Obviously, the other big piece is atom is an atom is an atom. However, people are going to react very differently to different incentives, to different behavioral nudges, and on, right? So for me, how that whole thing brought me to the place that I am in at the company, we work at the intersection of behavioral economics and AI. I sit in front of executives after executives. They have a lot of questions. Everybody wants to understand their customers. They want to understand what is it that is actually driving the behaviors and, you know, impacting top line, bottom line, any line for that matter, right? So not only having the ability and the skills to be able to solve the problems, but also knowing how to perhaps reframe the question and figure out what the right question is to begin with has been one of the things that my education and the weird mix that I went through has been very much empowering. So how about you there?
Yeah, that's amazing. And I know that, like, for some of us who are not coming from computer science background, it is a bit of a weird mix from time to time, but that's really nice to see how it's playing in your role currently. That's awesome. So, and let's say we have from our, let's say, more computer science stats background panelists, what are your thoughts?
Maybe I'll go next.
Go for it. Go for it, Jaya.
So I think I had a more traditional background where, you know, I did an undergrad in math. And at that time, I also happened to take a few statistics classes as well as computer science. And at the time that I studied, which is more than 2 decades ago, there was nothing called data science. So, I mean, it was just more like it just happened to all come in together into the so-called field where you need to know a little bit of math, stats, and computers. And after my undergrad, I decided that I'd like to do a little bit more applied, you know, apply the math and stats to real world problems. And that's where I did my master's in statistics. And then I was like, okay, started off as an analyst, and then they just coined this new term called data science. So I just happened to fit in. So.
Oh, okay, you just slid right in. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think there was too much planning on my side.
Right.
Just happened.
Okay, that's very interesting. Bhagat,
maybe
go for it.
I'll go next. I did my master's in mathematics, bachelor's in computers and statistics. Maybe I was always like being curious, what next? And the lecturer wasn't really for me because I look so young for going as a lecturer, and my husband is like, are you sure you want to go there? I'm like, no. So then I was like looking at computers. It just brought me so curious about the data. As Rogea mentioned, I can really compare, like, you know, when I looked at gigabytes of data, now it's like terabytes, petabytes. And I was like, okay, what is it? What can I do with the data? And being curious is what actually brought me here, I would say. Like, started as like a BI developer, and then did a couple of roles, architect, and then managerial, and now into the leadership where I'm really enjoying the data architecture and also data engineering.
Okay, excellent. I know you're very passionate about the data engineering side, and we're going to come back to that. To that, yeah, for sure. So let's go to Kanchan, and I know you're more focused on the analytics side of things. Do you find where you are now kind of in line with your background, or did you go in different directions to get here?
I think so, yes. First of all, thanks for the warm introduction, Sanaz. And nice to meet everybody over here today at this session. I actually always had a curious mind, as Bhagya also mentioned about her background. And I always wanted to know the why behind things. And that kind of, led me into doing an undergraduate degree in economics and mathematics, pursued further with a master's in econometrics. And then when I came to the US to pursue my master's, it was back again in applied stats, because I always wanted to tell the story behind the numbers. And I think that kind of helped me. And it kind of gelled with my personality of understanding and the curiosity behind things. And I think just progressed naturally into what I was liking.
Okay, that's very interesting. Okay, so let's I just want to talk now about your current roles. And data science, again, as a field, like Jaya said, arrived a few years ago. I think it had some kind of a definition at that time, but grew and evolved and grew arms and legs, and now means so many different things in different companies. So my next question to you is, which area of this broad umbrella of data science are you focused in today? So maybe let's start with Jaya. You're more in a individual contributor role right now, right?
Yes, yes. So I think for me, I'm pretty much in an individual contributor role, slightly different from the rest of the panelists. So there are a couple of routes, and I've opted for individual contributors. So I pretty much am hands-on in building machine learning and AI solutions for customers. So primarily people who are interested in building a cloud-based solution with some sort of predictive machine learning model, they come to us, we help them ingest their data into Azure, as well as help define the business problem and build the model. I mean, there's a huge buzz around this deep learning. Everyone wants to just build a deep learning model, even if it's not needed, but yeah. And then eventually I see the entire, I work with a group of engineers and program managers, and we help build the end-to-end pipeline where they actually have the model deployed in production to help solve some business use case.
Okay, excellent. And this is what I love about this panel, that you guys in the audience, you're going to see all different paths to advance your career. Either it's individual contributor or manager, leader, director, or in case of Rogaya, full-on co-founder and CEO. So you get all the flavors. Thank you so much, Jaya. Let's go maybe next to Bhagya and talk about the data engineering side of things.
Yeah, sure. I would say like data engineering is something like the base of the data science. Like if the data isn't right, the foundation isn't right, the data models would go wrong. So the data engineering is somewhere where you start looking at the data, building the data sources, pulling in, and then transforming it, and then loading it, and then, applying data science models to it. So, and building the features. So this is all the journey the data engineers would go through. Also having, as I mentioned before, curious about what data am I dealing with? What should I do with it? And how do I build the models? How do I build the pipelines? And what is exactly needed for the data science in order to apply the models or reinforcement learning, whatever it is, random forest. They do need the data to be in a clean way. That's what the data engineering does. And it's quite important, like people to notice, like data engineering isn't a man job. It is definitely a female job who is very curious and wants to learn. That's the message I want to get out of there. And I'm one of the women in data in 2019 as well, because I'm one of the unique one in the data engineering space as a leader too. So it's definitely important to be as a as a data engineer and then data scientist, I would say.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for that. Let's go to Kanchan now, and from the analytics portion of data science. What is that? What is data analytics, and how do you describe it? Your role?
I am so 100% in agreement with Bhagya. Without data, there is nothing. Data is the fuel behind models. It's the fuel behind analytics and helping make the leaders in the industry the decisions. I think without data, we cannot do anything. Data is the basic foundation. And if that's right, we get our models right, we get our insights right. It is, I mean, we cannot think of data engineering outside of data science. This whole thing is, a part of data science. And, I have had the, I've been fortunate. I've worked around these different, points or touch points of this entire data science journey, right from data to getting the insights into the hands of the stakeholders. So without data, there is nothing.
And your role in analytics, how do you describe it? Is it more on the BI side? Is it more dashboarding, analysis?
So
what is your team focused on?
Because of my curiosity and always wanting to continuously learn things and know things, I actually work across the board. I work across different teams from all the way from data architects to the teams from getting the data into the dashboards, into visualizations, making those visualizations very insightful. So I've got this an exciting role within Moment, which enables me to work across these different teams. And so, data is required, yes. And if you have good quality data, we can build really good models. We can, keep improving the performance of the models. I remember Jaya, one of our discussions in the past, Sinaz, if you remember, Jaya also mentioned, we spend about 80% time getting the data right so that we build better models. And those better models help us to, extract better decisions or better insights out of the modeling process.
Okay, thank you for that, Kanchan. And let's go to Rogaya. So you're taking this whole field to another level and you have formed a company around it. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Let me actually start where Kanchan just ended. And then I promise to tie it back to the company and the work that we do. I cannot agree more with everything that everybody's saying in terms of data being the foundation, but let me bring a different perspective into the picture as well. If having good quality data is a necessary condition to actually doing our work right, the sufficient condition is the ability to be able to go to data targeted. You cannot, just every single one of us, we're talking about petabytes of data, we're talking about terabytes of data, we're talking about spending years and years and, just having to have the data ready for us to be able to do the analysis. But so a lot of businesses don't have many years to spend and, millions of dollars, frankly, that is required in order to get this right. So how do you actually create value in the process? And I want to bring a little bit of focus to this question of value creation. See, every single one of us are super specialized. We are very geeky, extremely curious people. And because we absolutely love what we do so much, it is so easy to actually lose sight of what is it that we are supposed to do? What is the to what end of all of this work? To what end has to be value creation. It has to be the case that what we want to do needs to be aligned with what our organization is doing. And frankly, the simple fact that data is not at the moment creating the foundation for strategic decision making is part of the problem, right? And that's why all of us are doing what we are doing. So tying this all back, what we do at the company is really developing a methodology to ask the right questions, help executives literally at the CEO level at massive enterprises, and we're talking Fortune 10, Fortune 100, Fortune 500 companies, to be able to ask better questions and then work very closely with their internal analytics, data science, and data engineering teams to kind of bridge the gap. The name of the company, Theory and Practice, really kind of says it all. It's about translation. It's about the end between theory and practice. So the work that we do is very much focused around finding the right question, being able to then backward engineer from there, go to data targeted, build minimum viable models using minimal viable data. We talked about quality of data. So if we are lucky, our data is going to be high quality enough to give us signals. Let's not forget, data is not necessarily going to give us answers. Data is going to give us signals. We need to be able to then combine the signals very effectively and intelligently to be able to create value. So that to me is a very much end-to-end process, and every single one of us are part of that journey.
That's very interesting. Thanks for that insight, Rogaya. And maybe I'm going to use what you mentioned here and pivot into the next question. You're touching on, asking the right business question, and I'm going to ignore the fact that you called us all geeks and then move on from that, but I mean, this is a very, very true point, especially I would say for advancement in career in data science, to have, you know, an eye on the business side and on the why side of things. So my next question to the panelists is, we all know that there are certain technical skills very important to succeed in this area. Are there any non-technical skills, in your opinion, that have contributed to your advancement in this field? So who wants to go next?
I can go, Sanaz.
Go for it, Kanchan.
Because I don't have a computer science degree, but I do have a degree in stats and mathematics. But still, I think communication is number one. That's one of the soft skills I guess we need to absolutely have. To communicate is what you're doing. And before you get to what you're doing, what needs to be done? And going back to what Rogaya said, you know, asking the right questions so that you're collecting the right kind of data to answer those the questions to the decision makers, to the stakeholders. I think that's absolutely important. Communication skills is number one on my list.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree with you, although I'm not supposed to agree and disagree with anybody, but I agree with you. Who wants to go next? Other soft skills or non-technical skills that you think has been important to your advancement?
One thing that I can add to.
Let's go with Bhagya first.
Okay, sounds good.
Oh no. Okay.
Go
Right.
first.
Yeah. Sorry. Okay. I was like, okay. The second thing I would mention is, first thing, communication for sure, and second thing is around understanding what's behind, like the domain expertise, right? Like, don't think like too complicated. Like when you go to bank or when you go to the retail shopping, what are all the small things you do? Those are all things would add extra value. For example, I'm working on a retail project. The understanding the business is nothing but, you know, how can you cross sell the things, basically? Like, what are all the things you look for? These are all small things, but sometimes we think like, you know, these are small things. Maybe someone should have a extra super kind of a study in order to understand that. So you have to be imaginative and also think simple and understand the business. These are all the three things I would say definitely adds value as well.
That sounds great. Rogaya, your turn.
Sure.
Sorry, I'll speak after Rogaya. Sorry.
Go for it.
Sanaz, I think what you should be doing is just tell us who should go next.
Yeah, sounds good. This is a very enthusiastic panel. I guess I'm very lucky. So let's do that.
Sure. I think, you know, the thing that popped into my head as I was listening to Bhagya was why communication even is so important. I don't think any one of us would disagree with the fact that it's like such a crucial skill to have and practice constantly. But I think the why behind it is that I don't think it occurs to us that we actually speak a different language. Like here, everybody has some sort of very deep expertise in math and computer science or physics, or, you know, they're two economists. That is a rare thing. So, you know, but like, you know, at the end of the day, we really do speak a different language. And because we all grew up in bubbles that everybody speaks our language and we hardly ever need to translate ourselves to anybody, we don't really realize that although we are communicating in English, it doesn't necessarily mean that others actually understand us, because the truth is we are speaking a different language. So I think being really patient, and what Bhagya you're talking about is the elements that would help us along this journey, understanding the business side of it. Why is that even important? Well, the people on the other side are speaking a different language. They don't know what they don't know. The odds are we know a little bit more what they don't know that they don't know, right? Like there's a lot of things that we also don't know that we don't know. But I think being able to bridge this gap again through education and like very kindly and compassionately rather helping others to learn our language. We keep talking about data literacy in different organizations, right? Why are we even talking about that? But to be honest, if it was me, I would even change that language. It's not about literacy. It's like, I mean, how can you help somebody becomes literal in something that they don't even speak that language, right? So we actually have to take even a step back and realize that people are not quite familiar if at all, with what we have been trained for years and years, right? So I think that's why communication is such an important skill, and no amount of education is going to ever be enough. So we have to constantly try to both educate ourselves and others.
Okay, thanks for that, Bhagya. Kanchan, I'll go to you, but then I know we have a few minutes, so I want Jaya to also chime in. So go for it, Jaya.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so I think more in terms of an individual contributor, I think in that perspective, I think we actually need to work as teams. So it's just not one person, it's just not me who does the end-to-end. So we work with engineers, program managers, the business side. So, and like how Rogaya said, we have to be able to speak the language to business. The business does not know technicalities. So you have to have the soft skills to simplify things so that it's understandable to anybody who wants to kind of adopt the technology. And then
Okay.
I think team, you really have to learn how to work in teams. Some people are hard to work with, some are easy, and it sometimes can be a challenge.
Okay, I think we've all had those experiences as well at some point. No, that's great. So let's go back, Kanchan. I think you wanted to add something.
Actually, Jaya summed it very well, and I would say communication helps with collaboration, and that's one of the skills. It's not written anywhere, but I think we need to have that as top of the mind, because it helps us as we are speaking different languages. It helps us to, communication is the part that helps us to bridge those different languages. What is the customer speaking and what I'm speaking as a technical person. But collaborating, trying to understand what's the problem and trying to break that problem into some kind of a structured thinking kind of also helps, because it's again communication, right? If you think about it, it's kind of the foundation. It helps you. This is a project that's given to me, but there's so much. Where do I begin? When we start communicating with ourselves as well, which leads into structured thinking, that kind of helps. That's what I feel.
Yeah, that sounds very good. Thank you for that. So we have, I think, 1 or 2 minutes before this section of the panel ends. I think the one conclusion is, of course, communication, asking the right why, simplifying. These are all very important soft skills to have. I'm looking for, maybe before we wrap this one, there may be people in the audience who may not have this skill at the moment or are working on this skill. Let's say it's not fully developed yet. Any tips on how to improve your communication skills? How can we make ourselves better if you're not there yet?
Is this a question to us?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like for a volunteer to, if any of you has an
it's interesting because we kept talking about communication again, right? I think if we want to practice better or become better at communication, the first thing that we have to start with is listening. Practice listening. That's a very practical thing to do. And what I mean by listening is an active listening. It's not just hearing what people say and assuming that you understand what they said. Just like, pause your assumptions and really listen and try to understand your own gaps. Try to understand what is it that you don't get. Why is it that that person even asking that question that to you sounds so obvious and so trivial that nobody should even, bother, all of those sort of judgments and the stuff that is kind of going on in your background because it sounds trivial and easy to you. Just stay curious, listening and staying curious. If you're curious, then you're going to be able to absorb more. Don't try to just come up with a solution and be like, oh, look at me and how smart I am. Everybody knows you're smart because you're a data scientist. So putting that aside, really listen, stay curious, and just try to be of service and help as much as you can.
Very good advice. Thanks, Rogaya. I think let me just go back to our women in data science organizers. Do we have time? My alarm is going up.
Yeah, if you have one more question, or we can move into the Q&A, up to you.
Okay, so let's just see if anyone else has a practical solution of how to improve ourselves in our communication skills. My goal is, we leave everyone not just with how things are, but if you're looking for ways to improve and grow, we're hoping to provide you that type of advice. So I think Bhagya, do you want to say something?
Yeah, maybe I will. One advice I have is speak up when you have a question, or speak up when you have something to say, right? Don't hesitate and then, think that maybe that other person already know about it or they have already done it. I would say
Okay.
speak up.
Okay, great advice. Awesome. So let's go to the maybe audience questions for the 10 minutes and then we'll come back.
And hopefully everyone can see my screen. I just wanted, this is my question. So, because while we wait for more people to upvote the questions, I wanted to ask this one first. Oh, and some people upvoted it too. So I noticed all of you have a graduate degree in at least a math heavy field. And so do you think this was like necessary for you to succeed in what you're doing now? Or is it more of like a selection bias that people who are interested in these fields would enjoy a career as a data scientist, but maybe you don't necessarily use those skills and as often or anymore? I know someone mentioned that 80% of your time is finding the right data set. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on this.
Oh,
Uh,
I guess, Natasha.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Bhagya, do you want to go?
yeah, sure. Like I have seen teams who have done like masters in microbiology as well. It's not like, only mathematics is the one who has to go. It's just maybe coincidence that we all did it.
Yeah.
But I've seen people who have done the social, who have done microbiology, all sort of degrees are welcome. I don't think there is a bias, at least for data engineering. No.
And I think as long as one has the passion for learning, math probably may not be an impediment or still like my personal journey. I always thought when I looked at these great models, there's every day a new model that's coming out. And I thought, oh, you know what? I don't have a computer science degree. Do you think I'm going to be able to do it? But that didn't stop me. But I said, you know what? I really need to work a little more hard because I don't have a computer science degree. But you know what? There is a passion to learn, a passion to grow by learning, and that kind of I think helped me to pick up the latest and the greatest that's happening in terms of the models that are coming out in data science.
I would say it depends. And that's a very economist answer to the question. I think it really depends on the type of problem that you're asking. I think the prerequisite to all of this is like really, if you're a learner and you learn fast and you have curiosity, you're going to pick up things. But then there are areas that you cannot quite be reckless in entering without having the deep knowledge of what is it that you're working with. And I have seen absolute horror stories of this as well, that you just pick up a model, throw a whole bunch of variables at it, not quite understanding what is happening deep down there. So I think it's quite possible to learn all of that, but you really need to understand that this is a very complicated field. It has very real consequences. Our work, our models, our algorithms is going to impact the work in a very real way if we are lucky. So just not getting into things too lightly. So, to Kanchan's point, I don't think it's going to be a block or a stopper. If you really pay attention, you learn, you absolutely can learn, but you need to know that you have to learn. So just don't get in there because, you can just, do some programming, do some coding, and here's the model, and let me just take something out of box. Like that is actually dangerous. But just go learn and be excited, be curious, be passionate about it, and you're fine.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. And I'm just going to go now to the top question right now. So the question is how to balance making time, motivation, avoiding burnout, and learning new skills while working full time. Because I guess they're thinking of transitioning from being, I'm not sure the last part, but yeah, how to balance working and learning new skills without being burnt out. I guess that's the question.
I can take that one.
Yeah.
So I would say, you know, in this field, and I mentioned to you guys before that my background is physics. So at that time, let's say I end up now working with more machine learning AI side of things. I had done a lot of data analysis or let's say image analysis in my research life, but there has been continuous learning ever since. So throughout work, you know, company to company, project to project, there's a lot of learning within that business or within that area and within that role. But also there is a lot to be done in, let's say, keeping up your skills fresh, learning about the new technology. If there is any, you know, are there new frameworks? Are there, in my case, for example, I can give you guys I mean, that ages me very badly, but when I started my master's, the code base that I inherited was in Fortran 90. So we've came a long way since then, and you guys can imagine how much learning should have happened in the middle. But how to balance it, I would say, you know, it's a dance. You have to be organized. You have to set that time aside. Something that helps me is I mean, maybe I'm a little bit competitive, if you like, so I try to, you know, register myself in different certifications 2 months out, 3 months out, so at least I have a goal that I know I have to make, and then for that I study and I take online courses. And especially again for me in my current role, I'm less hands-on because I'm managing a team, but it's very important for me to maintain the hands-on skills. So it's really doing the job and having a part-time endless degree on the side. That's how it works for me. Now, I don't have any kids, I don't have any pets, I have a lot of time on my hands, so it would be interesting to hear from some of the other panelists who are way busier than me in their personal time. How do they balance that?
Okay, thanks. And that's a good tip about registering and things, because otherwise I'll always say, oh, I want to learn this new thing, but then it's hard to when you don't have a deadline. Did anyone else want to add to this?
Yeah, maybe I can just continue what Sanas mentioned, like having a goal, the next goal is always important. And you always having like a time dedicated for not only just the work, what you are doing right now, also the work you're going to do for the future. Always having next goal ready is the main key, at least for me.
Okay.
Yeah, it is definitely a balancing act. I am a mother of 2 kids, full-time job, but I guess I would say, you know, the passion for me and the curious mind has constantly made me, you know, look at things and try to motivate myself to learn new things and to keep, you know, to keep up to date. One thing which I will actually even like to connect here, you know, Rukaya said about active listening. It's very important that happens when you are working, you know, when you're having a job, right? To be an active listener is going to help you because you're going to pick up what is the latest, what is the greatest, what is the need of the hour. That's going to help you, and that's going to help you even, you know, kind of navigate your journey in your profession.
Okay.
Natasha, maybe I can comment on the startup piece because I actually think I understand the last part of that question very well. Yeah. If somebody has transitioned from a startup into a larger organization, life is probably very different. I think in a startup, even the question of balance is a little bit of a funny question because there's no balance whatsoever. And, you know, it's a simple fact of it, like you choose. And I think there are certain personalities that are more attracted to one as opposed to the other. Nothing wrong with either one of them. It's just, you know, it's just different environments and different speeds. So, you know, balancing in terms of not burning out. If the end goal of balancing is not to burn out in a startup environment, is truly is the teamwork and the collaboration. That piece is going to help you a really big way to not burn out because, you know, you don't have to, like, you're never alone. You're with a bigger team, right? In a bigger organization, I think the pace is different. The needs are different. Understanding how and where you can actually have the biggest impact is going to help you figure out what are the next things that you absolutely need to learn, how best to stay up to date, etc. Right? So, but in a startup environment, the speed is so fast, and I guess just completely separate, both from startup or the bigger organization. All of us are in a field that every day something new comes up, like every day. So it is, you have to, because frankly, every single one of us made a choice to enter. Like, it's nobody forces you to become a data scientist, right? So if you want to be a data scientist, you need to realize it is part of the requirement of the job, that you have to stay up to date. You know, something that came out like 2 weeks ago is old. Like, you really want to stay on top of things.
So Natasha, maybe I'll add as to how I keep myself updated. So I think I do follow a few people on LinkedIn and Twitter. So that's a low maintenance thing, as well as, if you join some reading groups or some meetup groups, I think, you kind of interact with people who are very talented, and then they might kind of introduce you to a new, domain or a new paper. And then if you're interested in that, you can go ahead and read. So those are some of the low maintenance ways of doing it. Because with a full-time job and other things, it can be challenging.
Right. Okay. So yeah, just I guess doing something at least.
It's better than doing nothing.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Looks like everyone's here. Back to you, Sanaz.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And thanks for the break. I think we all appreciated that. Okay. So we have another 25 minutes or so to go together. I'm hoping that we can focus now explicitly on the, let's say, career advancement, challenges, and then hopefully wrap it up with some tips and advice. So let's talk about the journey that each of you have taken, and I'm more wondering, let's say, have you grown within the same company and got promoted in the role that you started with? Or did you end up, switching roles and switching companies, and every time maybe got a, more senior title and more responsibilities and so on? What has the path been for each of you? So we'll go with Jaya first.
So typically the stints for each of my companies been, I think, 4, 3, and now it's, I think, 7. So what is that? I started off as an analyst, and then within the company, I think I got promoted to, I think it was analytical consultant, I forget the title. And then I did reach a point in that first, group where I felt that I couldn't grow much more within that organization. So that's when I looked for an opportunity outside HP and moved to Nokia. So obviously when you switch, there is, that's a good time for you to get a pay raise as well as a different title. So I got a title as a manager. And what is that? That was a different experience to what I was doing at HP. Then eventually, actually, the move to Microsoft was an acquisition. So we got acquired into Microsoft Nokia, the phone division. Hence, I landed up in Microsoft. So I haven't done too much of job hopping. And I know people who have hopped jobs every 2 years and have really gone up quite a bit. But I think I'm pretty much of the, I kind of think that it takes an individual roughly 1 to 2 years to kind of start performing at the certain level. So it's unless you give yourself enough time, you can't actually grow. And within Microsoft, I've seen myself get promoted every 2 years. So I do see career progression. So.
Okay, that's great to hear. Thanks for that, Jaya. Kantan, how about you?
So, like Jaya, I haven't done much of job hopping, but the first, I was working with Ipsos before I joined in Moment. I was with them for about 7 years. And I switched because I found an opportunity closer to home, which is in Moment. But to say I have grown in this company, I joined as an analyst for a particular client, focusing on one client, but now I'm working across different clients. And from an analyst today, I'm a senior director. But I would say I would credit that a lot to the company and my team and my manager as well. My growth has been, I will attribute my growth to these 3 units.
Right.
If I say, right from the company that gave me an opportunity and the company that is trying and working hard to bring about diversity in its workforce, right? And secondly, I would talk about, my team and obviously my manager, who's kind of giving us the, enabling us to grow. And that's probably
Within,
an important thing to grow within an organization.
okay, within the organization. That's very interesting. Okay, let's go to Rogaya. How about you? I know you have experience in startups and consulting, and now in your current role. How has it been for you?
I think my experience is a little bit different, right, from the rest of the group, and also I guess like the broader career paths that exist. But I'm happy to share, but also probably talk a little bit about like what happens to different data scientists that join our team and what is their growth path and development path in a company. For myself, right after my PhD, I joined a startup in Silicon Valley, and I joined at a pretty senior position. So I was basically working directly with the CTO and the CEO in that organization. So I felt like I had very direct impact and influence on the direction of the company. Then I I got basically headhunted by Hootsuite, and I joined Hootsuite. Same story, pretty senior position, but I had a very difficult time at Hootsuite because my manager I wasn't quite aligned with my manager. My specialties was quite different from everybody else in the team, and they didn't quite know how to use me. So that was actually an interesting experience for me to see that translation gap on both sides, frankly, because part of the problem was me as well. You know, I didn't quite have the skills to translate myself either. But definitely my manager and the other team members didn't quite have the ability to extract that out of me, which then bringing it to my own company, there are two different sides to it. In terms of my own career path, well, I'm the founder and the CEO of the company, and I have made very specific decisions in terms of the clients and people that we work with. So for example, in different organizations that we enter, at least I directly work with the C-suite, and you know, working with I truly believe the work that we do is very strategic. So if there is no buy-in at the strategic, at the very executive level, the work is not going to progress. And I see that other speakers are also nodding. You know, all of us in practice have had that experience, that if you want to have an impact, you need to be able to talk with the executives, you need to be able to talk to the C-suite, right? So so that's one part of it. But then in our organization, I hired directly from academia. I think there was only 2 people so far that we've hired that weren't literally directly out of academia. And the reason I hire out of academia, although it is rather a risky thing, is because having gone through that process myself, I know how to train people for practice, for industry. So in the organization, I mean, and training in our company at least looks like throwing you in a deep end, as in here's work, here's clients, here's, you know, just like a very real project with millions of dollars, sometimes billions of dollars at a stake. But the team that is around you is designed in a very specific way to make sure that the gaps are filled. And in terms of like the development path, we are a very flat organization, so we don't have a lot of managers. What is very important for me in the design of the team is that every single person develops the leadership skills, the communication skills, as well as the management skills, especially at this stage that we're in. We're about 25 people. So for this team to have that core skills and competencies beside the technical, they sit directly and work directly with the client, then they get geeky and very technical inside our own, you know, 4 walls, let's say. So the training path that is designed is very holistic at this point. There is definitely a specialization, some people more on the data science side, some people on the engineering side, some people on the experimentation side. But yeah, so that's been a very, I guess, intentional path that I have designed for team members to help them grow in this. And again, because the focus is very much on creating value. So
okay, I have a follow-up question on that, Rogaya, before we go to Bagia. And you mentioned that in your company, the hierarchy is very flat. So your team members are gaining leadership skills, management skills on the job. Do they have a room to grow from salary perspective or title perspective in the flat organization, or how would that work?
Yeah, very good question. And thanks for bringing that on us. Absolutely. And, in a sense, one of the first things, even when I'm interviewing different candidates, and to this day, I have interviewed every single person that I've hired myself. I mean, there are other people that interview, but I definitely make sure that I have that first contact with our team members. And with every single person, I ask them, what is exactly the thing that you want to see a year from now? What is that development path that you see? Because I am committed to making sure that you get there. And I'm actually going to hold you accountable, so you won't be able to slack off. So be careful what you tell me. If you right now you tell me that a year from now you want to see yourself managing 3 projects, well, guess what? I'm going to train you for that, right? And that comes exactly, that kind of expectation setting together, defining goals together, and really as a team being committed. One of the team members, when they joined, he was like, I am really bad at communicating, and I really would like to gain more management skills. And I was like, here's the deal. Your title is Chief Health Officer in the organization. And he laughed, and he's like, well, why health officer? And I was, well, you are going to be responsible. And he joined in the middle of COVID, so it was a little bit timely. But I basically told him that you are going to be responsible to check in with every single team member, which, by the way, is an essential skill to be able to manage a team. You really need to understand who is dealing with what type of problems exist, et cetera, right? And so we define goals. And if he hits it, there's going to be a raise associated with that. So the goals are very intrinsic. They are not about, oh, here's a pay level and here's like a title and here's something else. So flat in a sense that everybody's a data scientist. I guess we have data scientists and then senior data scientists, but that's literally it. But then in terms of the responsibilities that you take on and, projects and your willingness to really grow in your role, that's where all different raises and bonus structures and stuff that we have in place.
Okay. That's great. Thanks for that explanation, Rogaya. So let's go to Boggia, and I'm assuming BT is a very big organization. Is that fair to say?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And is it hierarchical?
Not too much.
Too much? Okay. So what has your experience been with your career growth? Switching jobs, staying in the same place?
Yeah, let me tell you, Sanaz, first of all, this is my 4th week in BT, okay?
Oh, okay.
It's my new job. All right. So I did 5 companies in my 17 years experience, so I would say not bad. So it's all mostly to do with the relocation. I was working in India, and then I came to UK, and I quite liked here. And later on, because of family commitments, I went back to India for 2 years. And later on, I really liked working in UK. So I came back to UK with a different company. So is the main reasons, I would say. And the team is like, I always loved the team, whoever I've worked with, and whoever I've worked 15 years ago are still friends with me even now. I'm like generally a friendly nature person and a very good team collaborator in general. Though I'm a director, I always feel like I'm a team player all the time, and I would love to be a team player, stay as is. And flat hierarchy, I think it depends on, I would say like it depends on person to person. Than the organization. Yes, the organization behaves sometimes, but it depends on the person to person. I touch wood, I always have managers who are very encouraging and who always looked after me. And your manager is always important, is the key for you. If you like that manager, then only join the company. That's my advice, okay? Because he is the one who is actually looking after you and then taking you to the next level, or giving you what you want. The team you are working with is quite important. That's the message I would like to tell to everyone. And I'm fortunate enough, I always have good team members and good company. I've just completed like 4.5 years in Quantum Black McKinsey, where I had got 2 promotions. So it's not like leaving the company is something you have to go step up as such. That's not the reason for that. It could be a different reason. For me, because it is consulting, I was working for 15 years. I wanted to see a different world where I am actually impacting the business directly. I am with the like a customer rather than working through consultancy. So is the reason I changed the job.
I see. Okay, thank you so much for that. That's very interesting, because I think all of you had almost a very different journey than I had, because I did switch a lot. So That's really nice to hear that there is, opportunity for growth within the organizations that you've worked in as well. So I'm just going to go from basically where we were discussing and some of the points that Rogaya already mentioned. In her team, people get to have more responsibilities, even though there are not that many different titles. For you guys, as you, let's say, get promoted or looking for the next step, what are you looking for? Are you looking for more responsibility? Are you looking for a more, let's say, senior title? Are you looking for like a higher salary? What is the kind of motivation there?
Okay, I could go
Go
first.
Go for it. Let's do it the other way around. I'll start from you and go to Jaya. Go for it.
I mainly look for what I enjoy. Like, for example, I'm enjoying the data aspect a lot. I carried over the data architecture and then data quality, data engineering, data sourcing. And in here, what I'm doing is I'm helping the team to do the same, whatever I have learned all these years. So I am putting my knowledge into practice. So that is what I love about this role. So maybe for the next role, I will look for like what I really enjoy, like, what is my next step where I won't be bored, I would say. That's what my take is. In all the times, that's what I was looking for. Okay, where I can actually gain knowledge and implement what I learned. And I always look for that.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that. Kanchan, do you want to go next?
Yeah, for me, it's going back to what Bhagya said, what you love to do. I love to be close to data. I love to extract insights in, if I get to do that and if I get to work, get to connect the dots because, to get from data to insights, there is a journey. And if I'm given that opportunity, which I am right now with in Moment, and I truly enjoy doing it. So that's one thing that will keep me motivated. But tomorrow, if you tell me, you know what, this product so well, but you should be going selling it. I said, I'm not pretty good at that. I would be horrible. Even if you were to give me like a director role in that, or maybe a VP role in that, I'll be like, that's not good. And that's not my
So passion is the priority. Okay, cool. Let's go to Rogaya. How about you? I mean, you cannot move higher in title. That's clear.
Right.
You have reached the peak. So
yeah, but maybe let me bring a different perspective, right? Here we're talking about women in data science, and we all probably know of the stats of the wage gap and the equality gap and all those sort of things. So at least in my company, but I also know of other organizations. I mean, we still are looking at 40% wage gap. Between a woman and a male equivalent, especially in data, especially. So these are still pretty real things. So, one of the things that's very important for me in setting up the company is that just simply doesn't exist. Everybody exactly starts at the same place. And, I mean, everybody has PhDs, so that's irrelevant. Like, it's not that somebody's going to come back with, higher education. I mean, yeah, sure, we have PhDs and have like double masters and stuff like that if you want to get really about those sort of things. But I think it is pretty important to understand that we have got to a place that we've got because we absolutely love what we do and we are good at what we do. So speak up, ask for things, and just go negotiate. These are some of the things that I would say is just like, very important. Like, and Kanchan, what you said is also so true. Like one of my first hires, he said to me, he's like, I just want to model and I just want to code. Do not ever make me a manager. Do not ever make me. I was like, hey, buddy, you still have to manage a team. And we are like in every project, several different people are going to be working on it. So no, there's always going to be an aspect of being a leader. It is not exactly the kind of place that you go into a cave and you write a bunch of like models and come out of it. So we are a collaborative team. But then there is, he's in his 30s, let's say. And then I have another 20-some-year-old girl that has just, I also hired her directly out of London School of Economics. And she's just like ball of energy that she just wants to, do everything and learn everything. And there's so much. And so of course, she always gonna want more, and she's gonna negotiate the heck out of everything with me, right? And good for her. So this is the kind of thing. I think it is going to be very important to be able to know your worth and actually ask for it.
Okay, thank you so much for that. You're almost stole my next question, but I want Jaya to answer this one first. Jaya, what do you look for in the next role, or anytime you switched? What was your kind of priority?
Well, I think it was primarily the roles and responsibilities, and
Okay.
that I mean, it pretty much. So at least at Microsoft, what I've noticed is typically promotions come when you're already performing at that level. So I mean, you're given a role, and then you're at a certain level as a data scientist, and then you're already performing at the next level, and that's when your manager kind of says, well, you feel comfortable at that level, so I'm willing to put you into the next level just because you're already outperforming a certain level.
I see.
So
That's great insight, Jaya, because this is actually my next question of, do you ask for promotion, or do you demonstrate that you deserve it and hope that your manager will acknowledge that, or is it a combination of both?
I think in my experience, it's been a combination of both.
Yeah, okay.
Like I think the rest of the panelists said, your manager plays such a critical role because there is a limited budget for every promotion cycle, and then every manager is trying to pitch their team members. So your manager, obviously, if you have a good working relationship with your manager, it does help.
It does help. Okay, perfect. So any other comments on, do you ask for promotion, or have you asked explicitly, or were you kind of promoted if it was in the same company based on your performance?
To me, it's a mixed kind of experience. Few companies I have to ask because that's the way it goes, and few companies I didn't. So
Okay.
it depends on the company and the culture over there. So I would say, like, be curious. Try to understand what's the company culture like. First learn the company culture, then you know whether to ask or whether to perform, and
Okay.
you don't have to ask.
Okay. Okay, that's a great way to look at it as well. So I know that we don't have too much time, but I want to talk about challenges, and I know that Rogaya, you brought up the wage gap that exists, unfortunately, in some organizations. In your careers, I'm looking to learn what has been your largest, let's say, challenge, both in your career or in your career advancement, whichever one you feel comfortable sharing. So looking for challenges first, then I'm going to ask you how you overcame it. So it's not going to be all bad news. Let's go with Kanchan first.
I think, taking up challenges, you are actually, honing your skills as you can take on more, and you have much more to offer. And that kind of also indicates to your manager, this person is ready to lead. I'm going to take a slightly different take on it because, there are different ways, there are different leadership styles. It could be, a technical leader, it could be a people leader, so on and so forth. But all of these different leadership styles, we need to think about to take those challenges, see if you can do it. And if you can do it, you've already, performed, you've already proved that you can do it, right? And that's kind of important. And that also helps an individual to learn. That keeps you constantly very active in terms of learning and trying to keep honing your skills.
So you're taking the challenges almost as an opportunity to grow and improve your skills and so on. Okay, so that's great. So I'm looking for also examples of, and maybe we go to Jaya for this one, example of a kind of a challenge in a let's say in a sense of difficulty, like some obstacle you had to overcome in your career.
Sure, I think I've worked in some teams in some organizations where I was the only woman in the team, and I think that posed a certain level of challenges because there's this whole guy gang and there's this one oddball who's Jaya, so I mean, how do you break in with all the men, and how do you get your voice, and I mean, how do you convince everyone? And I think they have also been, it also depends on different cultural groups, because I think it depends on people from different regions in the world. Some kind of have this wrong notion that, oh, well, men know it all and maybe the woman is just an accidental hire. So I mean, it's been challenging in that way in some case. And I think even in meetings, there are some meetings where I've had men talk over me. So I mean, how, I mean, those are very challenging situations, and I've had to learn how to cope.
So what is, just maybe as a 30-second reply, what have you done about that, or have you managed to improve the situation?
So, the first time when people spoke over me, I was intimidated. I was like, okay, maybe, and then your whole imposter syndrome, everything kicks in, and you're like, okay, maybe I'm just not as good as the guys. And then later, when I kind of heard them say things, I was like, I think I know more than that. I'm not as bad as I think I am. And, I always made it a point to say what like I think Bhagya, Rogya, everyone said that, we have to just say what we do and just don't doubt yourself.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for that. Let's go to Bhagya. What has been your biggest challenge, either in your career or as in your advancing your career?
Jaya mentioned, I'm the only woman in the agenda, like a whole whatever, executive committee or wherever it is. So I won't lie, I took communication trainings to improve, and I practiced myself. I kept my foot over there and then started thinking like, how can I do this better? How can I do this better? And I know I am doing good, but I want to prove to others also like I'm doing best. So I kind of took the training and then practiced so much. That's how I did, the challenges actually.
Very interesting. Thanks for sharing that. And I'm hoping, these are all practical solutions for everyone to take away from this panel, hopefully. Let's go to Rogaya.
Okay, this is gonna sound funny, but I always saw the fact that I was always the only girl in a room as the biggest opportunity ever. So, but let me maybe share some of the challenges as a person who decided to start a company, right? I am like literally always the only person in a room by about and the only girl in a room by like a 20-year age gap. Like there isn't a single executive that I'm working with that are not in their 50s, right? So I walk into the room and sometimes they literally mistake me. It's like, who is she and why is she here if they haven't met me in person before, right? I even like end up like dyeing my hair lighter so that I look a little bit older, so that I can, so all of these stuff aside. But, I have been in rooms, like I remember meeting a CEO and a CTO of another company. And at the end of it, they had the audacity to tell me that before meeting me, they were betting whether I would know technical stuff or not. And I just kept a smile on my face. And I was like, oh, I was 21 when I started going back and forth to CERN. I take it light. I make a joke. I don't make them feel stupid or uncomfortable either. I mean, it's a little bit unfortunate that they would say something like that. But I am just like, I mean, when you look at it, who is really at a disadvantage here? Is it me or is it them? It's really them who is at a disadvantage. So when you kind of change the perspective and you bring a little bit of lightness to the room, things change. So, with that, I can really from experience, these are not anecdotes. There hasn't been a single meeting I have not been able to get. I have met with executives from all the way, like we are talking C-suite of JP Morgan, Walmarts of the world, FedExes of the world, like Emphasis, Deloitte, I mean, you name it. And I've always walked into the room. I was humble. I wasn't that like, oh, look at me and I'm just like so better than everybody else. No, you stay humble. You know what you bring to the table. And you know that there is also so much you don't know and you're going to learn. So when you go into a room with that attitude, in all honesty, it's disarming for them. Because 90%, 99.99% of people that they deal with are people that are there, guys, that is, are there to show them how much better than them they are. So there is always this. So the last thing you want to do is be like a man. Like, don't be like a man, be a woman, bring the softness and bring the true strengths that we have. Like we can communicate effectively. We know, I mean, it's just in terms of the skills, make sure you're on top of your game, right? Like, so that's the thing. But like, and all of this said, I am absolutely not blind to the challenges that we are facing. Like there is challenges. I was the person who talked about the wage gap, the equity gap, the diversity gap. These are all very real things. But what is the option? What is the thing in front of us? Like, be sad about it, be mad about it, or be like, I'm gonna change it. And I'm gonna, like, I was sitting in I'm part of the board of the AI in BC, and we had a meeting with a whole bunch of other entrepreneurs in Vancouver. And there was a lot of discussion and conversation, especially around inclusion and gender diversity and stuff like that. There were, I guess, like 2 women in the room out of 10 of us or something. And, my thing was that why on earth are we still talking about this? Why are we talking about it as if, it should be like last century's problem? Like, I know it is still a problem, but the more you feed it, the more it becomes a problem. The more you just live your life as a smart, intelligent person who has something to contribute, the more it's not going to become a problem. So that's been my attitude toward this.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Raghav, for sharing. I know that the organizers are telling me that we have to wrap this up. So I just want to thank all of our panelists for sharing your experience, your journey, your tips to the audience. And I'm hoping that, we gave you all a perspective of different journeys, different stories, but all, hopefully productive and hopefully things that you can take from here and from our experiences and really for it to help the next generation moving forward. I know that we have a whole bunch of questions on my list that we haven't addressed, so hopefully you're going to ask those questions from us during the Q&A so we cover everything. But thanks everyone.
Thank you, Shanaz.
Thank you. Okay, back to you, Natasha.
So I'm just going to put up the questions again for the audience. And just a reminder to everyone again to visit menti.com and keep upvoting the questions, because I really do mostly choose the highest upvoted questions. Okay, so first, what would you list as your biggest strength at your current role and that makes you competitive with others? Maybe it's some, like you mentioned, it's being the only woman, or yeah. So does anyone want to answer that one?
I think my biggest role, Natasha, is being communication, whether it is, getting the idea across to the team, or if you're unhappy about it and talking about it to your manager. And I think that's the biggest strength for me. And that is kind of, I've used data to even communicate insights. So again, it's communication that has always helped me to grow, and also help my team grow at the same time.
Cool.
To me, it's collaborative and being empathetic. These are the 2 things I will count on.
For me, it's been my absolute commitment to see a difference and to make a change.
I like all these answers, and again, I feel like it's something you can't, all of those answers, it's hard. Maybe communication, you could learn it in school in certain courses, but maybe, at least so far in my experience, the computer science or math courses usually have less of an emphasis on those communication things. So it's interesting to hear that, or just a reminder about how those are so important. If no one has anything else to add, I'll just move to the next question. This one has been upvoted for a while. Can you suggest some of your favorite data science books or books related to data science? And we share these, we'll be writing these down and sharing with all the attendees later in case people want to follow up on them.
One of my favorite books, it's not a data science book, but I would highly recommend for everybody read it, is called Thinking Fast and Slow.
Okay, thanks.
That's a great one. I totally agree.
I follow a person very closely, Dr. Andrew New. Hope I'm pronouncing his last name correctly, but he is like the guru in machine learning. And I guess whatever he does, he tries to explain things in such a beautiful way, which is non-technical. It kind of helps people understand what is happening, where things are, moving, and what's the next best thing.
One book I suggest is nothing related to data science, but in general, it's the first 90 days. My manager has suggested it. It's really good. If you are going to a new company, please do read it.
Okay. Thanks for those.
There's another book, Weapons of Math Destruction. Math as mathematics. Weapons of Math Destruction. That's actually a pretty good one as well.
Okay, that one has been on my list to read for a while. So
there's a new book that
came
out also called The Genius Maker. If you guys want to learn more about AI and who are the most influential people in this, I think The Genius Maker is #1 AI book right now this year.
Thanks.
I have another one, but again, this is not related to data science, but so that hopefully we get less intimidated as we go through our journey of life. And this is a book by Malcolm Gladwell, David and Goliath. If you ever get an opportunity, please read that book.
Okay, thanks everyone. And then, yeah, feel free to add more in the chat, everyone. I just wanted to go to a specific question that I know is here. Yeah, so the question is, I've seen data leaders getting distant from the team. They talk strategy, but don't really understand what's going on beneath the surface level. So how do you balance working on strategy and the high level stuff and mentoring and working on the hands-on projects? I know this kind of has come up a bit, but
it almost sounds like, sorry, go on, Kanchan.
No, you go.
It almost sounds like my job, whatever the list has been done. So it's almost, it's more of like collaboration and then the experience of mentoring people. And, I would say patience is a key for sure when you're mentoring people. Try to listen, as Rogat mentioned, try to understand what the other person is trying to tell you and mentor that way. And strategically, yes, when someone tells you like in 4 weeks, someone can do this project, it sounds like, oh, how do they know it? I don't know it. Definitely they are either telling from the experience because they already worked on a kind of similar projects or adding sometimes gut feeling as well. So
the thing that I wanted to add was if it's really about the reason for the distance. If you see that there is a distance or you feel like there is a distance, maybe the first question is like, where does that distance is actually coming from, right? Is it because the data leader is not interested in getting to know the details, or are there just other things? So what is really the reason behind it? In my experience, is hardly ever because the person is either not interested to learn or understand, and it's more about either the volume of the work or different dimensions that is in place, right? So then as a contributor and as a team member, what is your role and what is your responsibility in bridging that gap, right? So if you see that your leader is just too busy or too involved, or hey, it's all about a strategy, and you're kind of thinking is like, oh, you really don't understand my day-to-day, do you, right? Like when you feel that kind of gap, it is actually important to raise your hand and be like, I've got a question for you. There's something maybe that I need to explain to you better or differently, or so just maybe sometimes point the finger back at ourselves and be like, what can we do in order to bridge this gap?
And that's a very good point. Go ahead.
Yeah, maybe one point to add, top-down communications, right? Like try to imagine like you have only 5 minutes to tell to your manager, how can you simplify the problem and say it in two sentences rather than telling the whole story. If you are telling the whole story, they will lost in the details.
That's very interesting as well. So I just want to add something more from the perspective of now being a manager of a very technical team. So the team I'm leading right now, they're not all in data science and machine learning. I have actually cloud engineers in my team, and this is an area that I'm trying to learn. And there's a lot of, let's say, components that they know which I'm not aware of. So my strategy has been, like, as the manager of this team, to really listen. And if I don't know what they're talking about, I will explicitly book some time with them to say, hey, just teach me, like, go to the beginning, tell me, why are these things important, what do they mean, and then I can, you know, grab that information that is very technical and summarize it, so then I can communicate that to my manager, for example, to raise if there's an issue, or if the decision has to be made. So I think some of us who are maybe sandwiched between very senior leaders and very technical teams have to, you know, be able to get that information and prepare it such that it's also understandable from, or, like, you know, summarize to the 2 minutes version that Bhagia you brought up. Yeah, that has been my practice so far.
Yeah, and I agree with Bhavya. It's, you know, even communication, because if you know what, you know, trying to understand what is the problem, but at the same time, you know, what is that what are they saying beyond what they're saying? So being an active listener, trying to understand what is not being said, maybe through their tone or maybe through the words that they're using. And it's very important. Yes. You know, we all are doing a lot of things. We are involved in different projects. We're doing a lot of things at work. But, you know, one way to help grow yourself is to help your team grow. And that happens when you kind of communicate constantly with the team.
Okay. And yeah, and thanks for also that's interesting to hear, and also the reminder for me to maybe, yeah, raise my hand and flag something for my boss. So we have like 2 minutes left. There's one more question I saw at some point about working from home. So just in the last few minutes, so how has working from home affected the communication in terms of your workspace, and what are some practices you use to overcome the challenges?
I'm happy to jump in. We've always had a remote team. I have team members that are in London and in Spain, different parts of Canada and US. So for us, COVID and remote working it basically made no difference to how we work. So I can give you guys some tips in general for how you can perhaps like improve the communication and the work, especially because there can be a lot of magic happening from, you know, a whole bunch of, again, people getting geeky together around the computer and just, you know, looking at a bunch of stuff together. So what we do, beside the fact that the Slack and all of those sort of things are open, we are basically constantly on Zoom. Like, we have open Zoom rooms and people jump in and jump off. So we would have like different people who are working on different projects, like literally sitting quietly together on a Zoom page. Everybody's like doing their own thing, but then you're not necessarily waiting to book a meeting with the person to just, you know, review something. So you just jump in and it's like, oh, can you look at this? Can you look at that? Sometimes I even join those rooms. And, you know, I would bug them because I'm perhaps having a meeting with the client, or I need to see something or learn something from them.
Okay, thanks. And yeah, I just saw my message that it's time to wrap up. So on that note, thank you to all our panelists and our panel moderator. I know, yeah, we did go a bit over time because, like we said, it was such an engaging panel, and I think everyone learned a lot and was inspired. And I know personally for me, I also have an economics background, so it was fun to see 2 economists on the panel. Yeah, so again, I also want to thank all the volunteers and my other organizers for helping things run smoothly and keep us on time.